Welcome to Hop Harvest in Victoria, Australia, where our hop farms are nestled in the foothills of Mount Buffalo. Up here, the summer days are long, the soil is rich and the water is abundant. And the views are pretty good too. Our story begins with a Chinese immigrant who came to Australia seeking his fortune. William Panluck was a shopkeeper here in the Ovens Valley during the Victorian gold rush era. At first, almost every pan produced gold. Then over time, it became less productive. Thousands of European, American and British moved on, but the Chinese continued to methodically strike gold from the gravel and sand flats. Their ongoing success caused anti-Chinese feelings to grow among the few hundred remaining Europeans, until in 1857 it erupted and a drunken mob burned down the Chinese camps and chased them out of the valley. Very few Chinese ever returned to the valley, but William Panluck rebuilt and continued to trade until the end of the Victorian gold rush. At that point, lack of custom forced him to close his doors and move to the regional centre of Beechworth before finally settling in Melbourne. William Panluck had 4 sons, Ernest, Alfred, Frank and William Thomas Panluck, who eventually returned to the valley in 1890 to work on a Chinese-owned tobacco farm. After 3 years, the brothers used their savings to buy an 8-hectare tobacco and hop farm. Later on, they purchased an adjoining property and another, bringing their total land to 600 hectares. Initially, tobacco was the chief crop, but the Panluck brothers became increasingly interested in hops. After a blue mould outbreak spoiled most of their tobacco crop in 1933, they began to focus solely on hops. At this point, hops were a relatively new commercial crop on the mainland of Australia, but they would go on to become the main crop grown in the valley after the tobacco industry was shut down in 2006. The Panlucks had the know-how and perfectly situated hop gardens, but there was a snag. They didn't have the irrigation infrastructure or the drying capacity for such a large crop. William Thomas Panluck, who was general manager at the time, shared his plans with the Henry Jones & Co. As a result, Henry Jones took a substantial interest in the business, providing much needed capital to fund expansion. With expansion came the need for a bigger workforce. At their peak, the Panlucks opened their gates to nearly 1,000 pickers who arrived on a chartered train from Melbourne. They built accommodation, a canteen, general store, milk bar, school, police station and most importantly a dance hall for their workers, which created a real sense of community. The farmhouse that William Thomas Panluck lived in still stands today, serving as the farm office for what is now the biggest hop farm in the Southern Hemisphere. It's a daily reminder of the Panlucks' lasting legacy to beer production in Australia. Our farm manager, Alan Monshing, is the current custodian of our hops. His grandfather was William Thomas Panluck's blacksmith, so you could say it's something he was born to do. Alan also oversees our newest farm, Buffalo River Valley, right around the corner from Rostrevor Hop Gardens. Alan, describe to me the modern Victorian operation.
Our Victorian farms cover 545 hectares. We're producing 1,300 tonnes of hops per year. We use the same agricultural equipment and we also use the same agricultural practices on both sites so we can get a consistent, even product.
And we've recently completed a $35 million expansion with the aim of bringing our total productivity up to something like 2,400 metric tonnes by 2024. This meant planting 300 new hectares of in-demand hops like Galaxy, Vic Secret and Eclipse, as well as the construction of a new processing facility that houses an additional 2 Danhauer pickers and 12 kiln floors. To support these new plantings, we also plan to construct a new 300 megalitre dam to simultaneously manage the water requirements of our crop and protect the flow of the Ovens and Buffalo rivers. This has created more chances for employment, skills development, and priority purchasing of local products and services in our growing region. Growing and harvesting hops is really labour intensive. How does it look here?
Yeah, we've got 32 permanent staff who work all year round to grow a crop of hops for us to harvest. At harvest time, our workforce lifts to 260 people. We work harvesting for 28 days, 24 hours a day, 2 12-hour shifts starting at 6 a.m. and 6 p.m.
G'day, Lewis.
G'day.
Harvest time. What's the first step in the process?
So first we have a bottom cutter come through and cut the vine at the base from the root. Then we have a top cutter come through pushing a tractor, towing a trailer. The top cutter then cuts the vine from the wire, dropping neatly into the trailer below. And as soon as he's full, the tractor driver makes a beeline for the processing facility.
The Buffalo River Valley complex was commissioned in 2020. Adding that to the Ross Trevor capacity, we now have 4 downhow pickers, 24 kiln floors, 2 conditioning floors and 2 bale presses in total here in Victoria.
That's correct, and here at the Buffalo River we have 1 picking machine shed with 2 downhows, 1 kiln with 12 drying floors and 1 conditioning shed with 1 bale press.
And that configuration of 3 separate buildings for picking, kilning and conditioning floor, that's exactly the same at Ross Trevor?
Yes, the concept is exactly the same, yes.
Jag, what do the tractor drivers do once they come back to the shed?
So the tractor driver is directed into a vacant loading bay. Then the tractor driver and a bine loader work as a team to unload each individual bine onto an overhead conveyor, and they're taking it into the picking head.
Alan, the Danhauer picker consists of a circulating belt with rows of metal picking fingers to strip the cones from the bines. The extraneous matter, the leaf and stem, all falls to the bottom and eventually is composted and mulched and reapplied to the farm.
Yes, that's correct, and we can actually adjust the speed of the rotors here on the picking fingers to actually eliminate too much strip off of the hop leaves so that we're only stripping off the hop cones, and we can also adjust the speed of the feed track, which can make a big difference to the product that we're putting into our cleaning system versus what we put out into the waste.
How many bines per minute might you target?
We target about 35 bines per minute.
And you'll get an adequately clean and comprehensive pick at that point?
At that number of vines we will, but that has to be adjusted according to varieties, because some varieties are a bit thicker and bigger, so you have to reduce the size of the matter going through the picking bank.
Once the hops have been through the picking head, they enter the cleaning banks. The cleaning bank consists of 3 stages, the first of which is the grizzly mesh. And the mesh separates the leaves that stick to the mesh from the hop cones that fall through the mesh and are carried forward in the cleaning bank. What comes next?
The next step is the hops go up a slat belt and they go into the trommel. And the trommel then has another wire mesh cleaner up there which gets rid of any excess leaves and stalk. From there the hops and whatever extraneous matter's there falls down into another section which is the dribble belts. And there's 2 sets of dribble belts per downhow picker. Those dribble belts are adjustable so that you get your hop cones to roll from the top to the bottom, and the hops down at the bottom are actually going into the main stream to go up to the kiln, and the stalk and leaf go over top and end up in trash.
So it's a simple physical separation. Heavy material versus light material, material that rolls versus flat material, and we use those physical attributes to separate cones from waste.
Yeah, it's a very simple process, but it's a process that you need to manage. You need to watch the type of hop you're picking, the variety you're picking, and the age of the hop as well.
What would you target as extraneous matter in your clean hop stream?
We target less than 1% by doing extraneous matter checks and then adjusting the dribble belts to achieve that.
Nathan, next the clean hop stream travels along this conveyor and is dropped onto the kiln floor.
Yeah, they come in through this chute here at 600mm deep across the floor until the end, and then we turn the burners on in the plenum chamber at 60 degrees until the hops are about 8 to 12%.
Freshly picked hops are at about 80% moisture. To get them down to between 8 and 12% must take some time.
Yeah, 8 to 12 hours, and we check them after 8 hours and more frequently.
How do you measure the moisture of the hop floor?
We wade through the hop bed in a diamond pattern and checking the extremities and the middle until they're down to spec.
After Nathan's decided the kiln floor is ready, we make sure the log sheet's filled out, the kiln log sheet, that it shows the paddock, the variety, the time the burner was started, the time the burner was turned off, which gives us our run time. Then all that information then is transferred across the conditioning shed.
Geez, it's pretty tropical in here, Alan.
Yes, it gets up to about 45 degrees C and 90% humidity. The wet hops weigh about 9 tonnes and they'll go down to approximately 2 tonne when they're dry.
And once the floor's in spec, we turn the burners off and leave the fans running for 20 minutes to take the heat out of the floor before we send them to the conditioning shed.
So Owen, the hops rest here for 12 hours till the heat and moisture has evened out across the piles.
So once the hops have had adequate conditioning time, that's when you get involved.
Yeah, that's correct. So when they're cool, dry and in spec, we'll put them up into the bale press, which is all automatic.
What bale weight are you targeting?
We're going for 75 kilos, and that's where the bale press will stop when it's at capacity.
And so a bale is pressed and then it gets a unique number?
It does. It's a lot number, which goes to every pallet, which is equivalent to 8 bales.
And when do you undertake sampling?
Every day. We'll do an auger sample. So the auger sample will analyse that the hops are stable and also for the oil content as well.
And what rate do you run the press at?
We want to achieve anywhere from sort of 14 to 16 bales an hour.
The bales go to our cool room before being transported to our pellet plant, where they go from pressed flours to pellets.
So bales are fed into the bale breaker before being milled into a powder and pressed into pellets. What's the secret to making a perfect pellet?
Yeah, it's all about monitoring temperatures and densities at different stages throughout the process. It's particularly important that the powder getting pressed through the pellet mill doesn't exceed 55 degrees, otherwise the pellets don't hold their form.
So next we seal the pellets in an oxygen barrier laminated foils, which are backflush with carbon dioxide to preserve the impact in the beer.
We store these packaged pellets in temperature-controlled warehouses across Australia and around the world, so they are readily available to our brewing customers when they need them. Unopened foils will last up to 3 years in storage temperatures of 1 to 5 degrees Celsius. Well, that's the end of our farm tour. Thanks for taking the time to learn a bit more about our Victorian farms. A special thank you to our brewing customers who have helped keep William Thomas Panluck's legacy alive. And we look forward to welcoming you back on the farm soon.